by and share just kind of an update on several of our campuses and how things are going. And we're all kind of excited to be together and to talk. And so I want to take a moment just to introduce you to our different campus pastors. Why don't I start off to my left, which is Scott. Scott, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Scott Underwood. I'm the campus pastor out here on the Palouse. And if you don't know where that is, join the club. We're about 300 miles away, and we are in Moscow, Idaho, which is right on the border of Washington. So we're just about 8 miles from Pullman. If you know where Pullman is, go Cougs. So yeah, Blues campus.
Dan?
Hi, my name's Dan Hamann. I am the campus pastor in Everett, and we've been going for a little over 3 years now. And yeah, I think everybody knows where Everett is. So that's us.
I'm Di, and of course, I do not pastor the central campus alone, but I tend to think about ground level details in how we make services go and how we communicate here to allow my husband to think at the 30,000 foot level, dream, plan 10 steps ahead. So we make a good team there. So I represent our central campus today.
So this has been a crazy 6 weeks. 6 weeks ago, we were gearing up for lots of plans for Easter. We had a huge marketing strategy for Easter. And 6 weeks ago, everything changed and we were no longer meeting and turned into basically a TV studio a little bit. Everything's online. How is your campus adjusting to all of this, Scott?
I think, really surprisingly well. We have done a lot of work to try to build community out here, to try to keep a sense of normalcy. And of course, we don't know what normal feels like anymore. And we know we're not going to probably return to that anytime soon. So what we try to do is connect our people in smaller groups, in chat experiences. We created a venture community Facebook page. Got about 186 people involved in that right away, sort of our core people. And we've just been putting together some video content. And so I think just kind of in conjunction with what Venture Church is doing, we really feel like we're a part of something really big in this moment. And so we've just enjoyed really the leadership and the experience that our people have been able to connect with, both to our community, because of our distance, we put some focus on that. But then in terms of the church at large, it's been a really great experience. So yeah, going really well.
What about you, Dan?
Well, I would say it's definitely going well. It's a very different reality to do stuff like we're doing right now, to talk to people on video all the time. And that's our new deal. I definitely think people are adjusting to it at our campus. There's been so much great content that's come out of the central venture, and it's just been just a non-stop stream of really fun stuff, serious stuff that's in between. And we've tried to ramp up our content at the Everett campus. We're breaking all kinds of records on our Everett Church Facebook page. We've been doing some devotionals and just a lot of communication that way. And I just think people are adjusting to that and are ready to be back together, but are adjusting to the fact that this is our reality right now. Lots of Zoom.
I would say at the central campus, I think most people know because they're seeing the amount of content that's coming out, but we really decided very early on, and I think this is probably the thing I'm the most proud of, is that as a team, and that's all of our campuses too, we decided that we were going to lead versus react. And I think reacting would have been, and not that there's anything wrong with it, but reacting would have been waiting until this is canceled, Easter's for sure canceled, Day of Hope is for sure canceled. And instead we made a determination that we're gonna start pulling the trigger on things right off the bat. And so I'm really proud of the fact that our team basically turned into half being on the outreach and meet needs side of things, the relief organization, we like to call it, and half of our team immediately pivoted to become a TV production studio. And of course, we've got some serious talent in that department that we couldn't do it without. But I remember when I was a regular old pastor, and now I run a camera 2 days a week. So I'm really proud of how I've watched our staff come alive in creativity and just embrace a whole new temporary normal and lead fearlessly through it, even though we have no idea where we're going, just like nobody else does. But I'm just really proud of how everyone just immediately pivoted and started doing what God put before them.
What is something creative that your campuses have been doing that I don't know, you're really proud of? Something creative? Or if maybe it's not creative, maybe it's just something simple that you guys have started implementing.
Well, I know for us.
Oh, go ahead, Dan.
Oh, sorry. I know for us, we started, I just thought, hey, what a great opportunity. We've got all this time. Let's do some Bible studies. And so we started our Zoom Bible study at 9 and 11 on Saturday morning and afternoon. And I think last Saturday between the two meetings, we had, well over 50 people who were a part of that. And it's not just the Bible study, but I think the thing that I have loved about that has been to see all these faces pop up on my screen that I can actually talk to, that maybe I haven't seen for 5 weeks now or 6 weeks. And the Bible study part's been good, I believe. But the best part has just been able to have a group conversation together with more than just my family that I'm here at home with. And as much as I love that, it's just been great to see 20 faces that I haven't seen for a long time, a couple times on Saturday, and to be able to talk together, talk about Jesus together. I really feel like this moment is an opportunity for us to grow in our relationship with Jesus and even in the way we connect with each other. I think this is a unique moment for us. And if we'll take advantage of it, God will honor that.
Scott?
That's good. I like the way that we handled Easter. I think that was, kind of like Di said, I feel like we as a church got in front of that, and the Palouse campus, we did too. Some of the creative things that we did was, I thought was hilarious, is this automobile Easter egg hunt. And when I first heard about it, I just did not know how that would work. But what it was is you signed up to participate, and you would create, and your kids would get together and color this Easter egg. And it was big enough so that when you put it in the window, everybody could see it from the road. It had like a number or a letter assigned to it. And then like 15 minutes before 2 o'clock on Easter, you'd get all these clues, and they would just be addresses and things. And then people were kind of racing around town in their cars, going from house to house, seeing these Easter eggs. And at the end, it was this coded message that you'd have to unscramble. And the first person to text our kids ministry director, Bethany, won prizes for second and third. And so it was really cool. The unscrambled message was read Matthew 28. It went over so well. We had people that weren't even a part of our church that did it. People in the community that said, I hope you do this again next year.
Wow.
We're like, okay, well, what if we're not quarantined? They're like, oh, we still want to do this. So I just really think it's cool that we came up with something during quarantine that was so fun and so engaging that even if we're back in a building, and we sure hope to be, right, that we'll still be doing this. So that was cool. Other creative things, like Bethany had gone around and had visited every single kid in our church and dropped off a little plant and a letter where the kids had done several months ago, where they wrote a letter to themselves. And she gave them their letter back with the plan. It was just a really cool experience, and just feel like she connects really well to those kids. So I'm kind of proud of how our staff is operating in this time. Really super creative, really great content. We post every day. Usually they're more on the serious side. They're, we do refuel, which we've been doing. We do that online, which is honestly a little weird for me, but it works. And we've had actually more people joining us. Refuel is something we do every week. It's kind of like one voice. And so we've decided to continue to do that. And it's been really good.
Well, I represent many more ideas than just my own, certainly, as I know you guys do too. I think some of the things I'm the most proud of is, again, how quickly we pivoted. And I read a quote yesterday that said, we are not just working from home or worshiping at home. We are a part of a global pandemic and trying to figure out how to worship and work at home. And I thought that's a really important distinction. And we, I think, as a team, as a venture team, all of us really worked hard to get on the front end and start pumping life into people's homes. And so things like the meal distribution, I mean, some of those things I'm just really proud of, but I think the one I love the most because it blessed someone I love so much was us adopting all of the Providence Hospital staff, basically. And all of the kids that drew pictures and wrote cards. And it was just such a simple thing, but it was massive. It was a few hundred people. And I got to be the lucky one who took the baskets full of chocolate and Starbucks cards and cards to the hospital and drop it off. And then my friend Robin, who was the charge nurse that received them all, for the next 2 days, just sent me picture after picture after picture of people sobbing reading those cards or doing little dance moves. I just thought it's such a practical, loving thing. And she summed it up best by saying, venture, even though not everyone shares our beliefs, you took our beliefs and you shared them with the love behind them that represents God to an entire hospital full of people and the families they represent. And I'm just so proud of you. And I just thought, that's us. We can adapt to so many things, but remembering to love others, even when we're tired, even when, we're also putting in long hours, just makes it all so worth it.
Yeah, I think one of the things that the church did that was surprisingly a blessing to a broad number of people, and there's really lots of them, but was we go to Israel, and Scott and Di, you were with us in Israel, and I bought all those little communion cups for everybody that we were going to give out on Palm Sunday, and then there was no Palm Sunday. And so we just thought, why don't we mail these out? And when I'd written this little note, and then we went to the post office and we found out how much it was going to cost to mail them. And it was going to cost more for the individual mailing than it did to actually buy the communion cups. And I remember as I vacillated on whether or not to do it, because, we knew finances were going to be tight and things, and obviously they are, but we decided just to go for it anyways, because we wanted to be able to, even though we couldn't be with people, we wanted to be able to touch people in their homes. And just seeing the overwhelming response of everybody across all of our campuses to getting this little token of love from the church, I thought was, I thought that was really pretty awesome.
Yeah, and I have to just add too, I've heard from lots of people on our campus that was just such an expression of unity for us. To receive that was super special. And we had kind of a hashtag going, quarantine communion, and lots of people were just posting their little cups and their, goldfish crackers. So yeah, that was awesome.
I want to kind of piggyback on a little bit of what Di had said and just ask you guys this. I'd love to know maybe what the Lord has been doing in your guys's heart during all of this. And I'll just start. I was sharing this with Di, and I think I might have even mentioned this to Dan, that this building program that I was in, and we really got stuck in this building program for 3 years. And the whole thing starts with me having that anxiety episode that led me into the hospital, and, a series of anxiety attacks that happened afterwards. And then we had that wave of staff that just transitioned to go be senior pastors. And it just seemed like one thing after another, financial stress, yeah, my physical issues. And I thought I was broke. Like I literally thought I had fundamentally something had broke in my heart and in my mind. And I was kind of putting the pieces back together and was figuring out how I'd be me, but be different, because I didn't think I was ever going to get back who I was before. Because I literally thought the building program broke me forever. And I was different. And I was sharing this with Di, that having to pivot, shift, cast vision, fearlessly lead from the very beginning, something kind of reignited in my heart. And I was sharing with her the other day that I feel like I'm me again. Like that maybe I didn't get broke, that was just a season and I get to forget about it now. And I just, on a personal note, I feel excited about ministry again. I feel excited to lead again. I feel excited about our church. I feel like I'm able to lead fearlessly, courageously, boldly again. And I feel like the building program didn't like permanently scar me for the rest of my life. Thank you, Jesus. What about you guys?
Well, that's awesome. And I can see that in you, actually. It's really cool to see that in you. The passion that you've attacked this whole thing with has just been great. And, envisioning me to pursue that way. I think for me, the thing that has been resonating in my heart for 2020, and maybe the virus has only accelerated that, has been this word more, that I'm supposed to have a deeper walk with Jesus this year, me personally, that he wants to do bigger things in my life personally, at our campus, in my family. And it's just resonated in me to such a degree that even the virus can't sort of shake that. In fact, I see that as God provided me some extra ability to spend more time with him, which I wouldn't have gotten otherwise. And I have just, for me personally, I've felt like that God wants to do more in my life. He wants to dig deeper. He wants me to discover more of the Holy Spirit and his power at work in my life personally. And I believe he wants to do that for our campus, certainly, and for Venture Church, that he's going to, when we get back, we're going to be stronger, not weaker than we were when we started this. That I believe this is going to be an opportunity for us to grow closer to each other, not farther away. And that this is going to be a chance for us, when we get back together, we're going to be bigger than we were when we started. I believe that's the promise I am owning for COVID, and certainly the promise that I'm owning for this year.
So, I love the series that we're in, the series on Elisha. And one of the things that, I kind of noticed in his life is that he shares both a blessing, but also a burden. And the burden part of it is really meaningful to me, because it has just a way of distilling out what's important. And so if I just could go back to like February, where I was at the beginning of February, we were talking about record attendance at our campus, and the financial picture was looking really good. We were talking about, that hitting that 300 mark at Easter and what that would look like going forward. And, we just have, everything's really clicking. And then all of a sudden some things start to happen, in the middle of that blessing. Then all of a sudden, my son gets sick, like a serious bout of pneumonia, like life-threatening stuff. He's, on a ventilator, in the ICU. It's touch and go. And he was in the hospital for 2 weeks straight. And that was so hard. That was one of those moments where you just sit there and you're looking at your child. I've never been through anything like this, looking at your child and thinking, gosh, this is what's really important to me. And coming out of that, he started to get better like at the last moment before I literally had to cancel my travel plans to Israel. But I ended up going, saying goodbye to him in the hospital was one of the hardest things that I ever did. And I'm glad I did it. We went to Israel, and it was another moment of, blessing, and at the same time, just distilling out what was important to me. And then we get back, and boom, it was like Israel, and then there was like a week, and then COVID, and we just saw it coming. And then stay at home orders happened. And again, it's just been a moment in my life where things in that different reality have begun to distill what is really, really important. And so there's been a lot of spiritual vitality coming out of that for me. My mornings mean a lot to me because I really realize that sometimes my first instinct has always been to be distracted. And I realize that actually God's wanting my focus more than ever, that there's a time in the day for that, but there's also a time to be quiet and to have that solitude. It's been a really great time, me and Jesus, through this experience. And I think that's actually affected my ability to lead our staff over here, because I've been able to be really clear and calm and positive. And so I just really appreciate the way that the Lord led me through that. It's like we had blessing in January. February started off as a burden, then in Israel, a blessing again. So I kind of roll with this whole thing, like in the life of Elisha, how that worked in his life as well. So I don't know. I just see that connection.
I feel like the season right before, that's how COVID's going to be, before and after. Right before, I felt like my calling was very specifically to release other people in their giftings and really to raise them up and help them be equipped and deploy them. And so I was in the ramp up of all things. Of course, we had just done the grand opening of our building too. So I was in the ramp up of, man, we're going to get our veterans ministry rolling here. We're going to get a Spanish ministry unrolled and out the door. We're going to get multiple fitness opportunities going here. Of course, Brandon is filling our church building with other ethnic congregations. And I mean, it was popping around here. And it's how the Lord works, that when the tool was taken away, the building, are you still going to do the ministry? And I've loved, as I check in with those leaders and watch them, how they are working around, just like we are, how they're working around the impairment of not being able to meet together. Like, for example, as car after car after car is driving through our parking lot, 500 people going through our parking lot to get food, there's Luz Diaz out there as our Spanish interpreter, literally asking people to roll down the windows of their car and asking them if they're right with Jesus and leading people to Jesus as they're driving through our parking lot. I just think the building is something we love and it's a blessing, but we don't have to have it to do ministry and church. And so I love that some of the beauty of what's going to come from this is the natural ministry that's coming out of this season, and how people are connecting to each other and reaching out, and how people are keeping their ear to the ground. Do my neighbors need help? Does the senior center down the street need resources? Where are the needs? And then working together like the early church we read about in Acts, and how they would pool their resources to help other people. I just think is beautiful. I'm tired, good tired, but it's so beautiful to watch. I watched Tony Matar, our youth pastor, week one, before there were even stay-at-home orders. I watched him pivot immediately online, and that's a frightening thing. We all know, leading campuses, it's a frightening thing to take a youth ministry totally online, but he had youth pastors around the country whose states were behind ours in quarantining and outbreaks, calling him, churches of thousands, calling him saying, how are you doing this, man? How are you deploying this so fast? And I just am so proud of our team. I feel like I could stand before Jesus right now and say, this is all good with me, because I'm watching people I love and I'm so proud of do ministry like they were made to do. And that's a pretty cool thing. I just want to cheer everyone on. I want to cheer you guys on. what you're doing to love people and love your communities just makes Jesus look so good. And I'm proud to call you guys teammates.
I had, I was always praying that once we built this building, that the whole organization would just blow up and that our mission would increase, our influence would increase. And the irony for me is we're now 4 months into what we've been working on for years. And I feel like that's what's happened. Boy, did I not expect it to happen this way. Who would have thought that the blessing of the building was that it allowed us to have the equipment we needed to be able to produce online content? Who knew? I do think it's amazing how across the board, our entire church, including our people, everybody their attitude has been, where can I serve? How can I help? What do we need to do? How do we bless the community? And I think as a result, the gospel is spreading. Years and years ago, we had a theme that was, we were quoting that verse that Paul had said where we want to see the gospel spread rapidly in the world, just as it has amongst you. And that is what we're seeing. We are seeing the gospel spread rapidly. So I think that's pretty awesome. A couple more questions, and we'll kind of wind this down. But what are you looking forward to most when we're able to start having real services again? We'll start with Scott.
Yeah, it's interesting. It comes at a great time because we had a discussion last night with our volunteer and paid staff. And one of the things that we talked about is, interestingly enough, we kind of don't want to go back to normal. The way that things were is just that's not what we're aiming for. So going forward, I think what we're actually looking forward to is to take some of these relational tools that we've seen God provide for us and leverage them even more in the future. I think that one of the things I look forward to is, again, being able to reconnect more in terms of unity with all of the other campuses. We're kind of in a unique space with the distance. And so we just really appreciate the leadership and the community that we have with all of our campuses. That's one of the great things about being venture. And so for us, that's one thing we're looking forward to. And I guess, honestly, it is just to see people face to face, that there is that component of, yeah, this may be good enough, but it would be great to sit and meet with people again and connect and get that feedback. Again, we appreciate the technology and the tools, but man, I definitely look forward to ministering in more of the traditional ways.
Yeah, I think so too. As you know, I'm an extrovert and I love to hug people and just be around people and talk loud to people. I love to hug you, Pastor Brandon, because I feel you kind of squinch up when I do that. So I definitely am looking forward to that. Although I don't think I'm going to be able to do that. I'm going to have to like fist bump people or,
some of the benefit for me being out here on the Palouse, Dan.
Yeah, I know, dude. So that's a little bit of a bummer. And I agree with Scott. I think one of the cool things about the technology that we've been forced into is I think it's helped us to, in some ways, connect in a way we haven't usually done. Like I'm having a 9:00 marriage counseling appointment tonight on Zoom after they put their kids down. And it's actually kind of important and needs to be done, but maybe that wouldn't have happened if we couldn't figure out how to get together in person. So that's sort of a unique situation. I think for me, I am looking forward to being in the same room with people, even if I have to fist bump them and not hug them. I'm looking forward to just the dynamic that comes from worshiping together in one room with your hands up, with the people standing next to you, crying out to Jesus in whatever kind of voice you have, with a whole bunch of other people. There's no substitute for that. I could worship in my front room, which I did barefoot this Sunday when I went to church. but it's not the same as being surrounded with my brothers and sisters and all of us worshiping Jesus together. So I'm super pumped to be able to do that.
Worshiping together is definitely, if not my top one, it's one of them. I spend about 20 hours a week in our auditorium behind a camera in a room that used to be full of chairs and people. And now all the chairs are stacked up and we have all this furniture in there so we can change sets and all these decorations for set design and cameras on platforms. And while I'm so proud of what we're doing, I'm like everyone else. I have moments where I'm like just so sad that this room is supposed to be full of people. And so I've determined that one of my responsibilities is to speak life into that place. And when the bodies come there, and they will again, there will already be God's presence and God's life in that place. And so just a little teaser, David and I are working on, for this next week's worship night, so next week's worship night, a pretty cool worship and prayer that will be all about speaking life into venture. But I guess I would the other two things I would mention, one is small groups. I think small groups have never been more important than they are right now. And they're working virtually. And I'm so proud of every small group leader that has decided, even though small groups are technically over by the calendar that we use, probably half of the small groups at our central campus are still meeting by Zoom because people need each other. But I'm excited to be with people and not see their face on a screen. Although I'll take it for now, I am a lover of people and I want to sit and have coffee and talk to people and be with them. And I guess the other random thing on my head, in my heart, is I'm really excited for who we're going to be, not just what we're going to do. And we're very much a doing church. And I love that about us. We're very action oriented and we seize the day and we throw ourselves into everything. But right now we're being formed and sharpened to be something greater than we were before. And who we are is fantastically important and critical to what God has for us to do. But what we do has to come from who we are. And that's individually, that's us as staff, but that's us corporately too. The power of the body of believers coming together, having endured great trial for some, but trial certainly for all of us, and suffering and frustration and discouragement and all the things we're working through and all the long-term things that will still be there to work through. The power of that body of believers that have hung on to their faith and planted a flag in their trust in God, coming together and lifting an anthem of worship, it's unstoppable. I'll probably sob my whole way through at least the first 2 weeks of being in a room worshiping together.
Yeah, my last question, and I'll start by kind of answering it, and it kind of is also my answer to what I just asked, is what do you think is changed forever? And I would say when I looked at the state of church universal, not just our church, but church, Western Washington, church around the US, there is a progressively decreasing emphasis in spiritual things. Like the economy was going so great, life is good, people don't need God and all of this. And this was like the defibrillator that kind of shocked everybody's heart and woke everybody up again. And I don't think we're going to struggle with people forsaking meeting together for a while. Like, I think people are going to really appreciate the opportunity that they have every week just to get together at church and just worship together. And for me, I think the biggest thing is it's reignited spiritual hunger in people. And I'm hoping it's not just a phase. Like, I was talking to someone the other day. I hope it's not just the 9/11 people came to church for a couple weeks afterwards, but then they kind of shifted back into their normal routine. I hope this has like permanently reignited people's fire for Jesus and passion for Jesus. So that's one of the things that I hope has changed. The big thing that I think has changed is I think the acceptance of video and the acceptance of online campuses are now universal. I just think people are now, they're used to being fed via video, so it's not going to be as much of an issue moving forward. And then in addition, the validity of an online campus it's a real thing now. The irony for me is this is a true story. About a week before all of this happened, I was hanging out with a friend of mine named Troy Jones, and we were just doing lunch, just talking about church ministry. And we were talking about how you gauge your online campus, if it's real or not. Like, do you count online attendance? Do you really consider that a part of the church, or is it valid? And here we are, 6 weeks later, all we have is online church. So I think that's changed forever. I think it's every church, no matter how big or small, is going to have an online campus forever. And then I also do think we have now moved past the huggy church era. We are now in the fist bump era. I think it's going to be a while before the Steve Gustafsons and the Dan Hammonds get to maul people in the lobby, probably 2 or 3 years from now. It's going to be the fist bump, elbow bump era. But what do you think has changed, Scott, forever?
I think you said it really well. I mean, I agree with everything you just said. And, you know, I was just reading an article. I think it was pretty right on. And it was just kind of talking about how this experience for our nation has been a national and kind of a corporate trauma. And, you know, you can almost go through and mark out the stages of grief that people are in. And what that does is really profound, because not only will people ask the questions of purpose and meaning in their lives, but they'll start to ask, what do relationships mean to me? There's been so many people as we walk through this that have talked about how they're speaking to their parents more often. They're calling mom and dad every day, where, you know, before it would be months, or, you know, I mean, these are the kind of things that we see happening, the connections that are happening online. And I think, and my gut says just what you said, that this is going to continue for some time. I don't think we're going to go back to, you know, handshaking and hugging and all of that. We're going to have to be very like sensitive and kind of a 1 Corinthians 10 way to those things which might be legal but not permissible, or, you know, we'll have to be really sensitive to people moving forward with those kind of reservations. But no, I'm really excited. I think that we just have to be prepared to answer real questions that they have and just present hope all the time. So yeah, I mean, you said it really well.
I think for me, I totally agree with both of you that there is a hunger that I see in our world that we live in that is different than it was before we started this. I was watching CNN a few weeks ago, and this guy who has a show, he was interviewing TD Jakes, and he just stopped and said, "Hey, could you pray for the whole country? We need you to pray for us." And, you know, that's something you would never see on a news show like that, where he's just breaking down and saying, "We need you to pray for us. It doesn't matter what you believe about who God is or isn't, but we need you to pray." And I feel like that Jesus has become acceptable again. That he's a legitimate option in your life, not some sign of weakness any longer. And that's what fear will do to you. It'll drive you back to the core questions like, who am I? Why am I here? Where am I going? And if I died in this pandemic, what would happen to me? And I think people are asking all those questions. I do think, as well, as you said, which is the online reality is with us now to stay in some form. You know, however that's going to be, people are going to have an expectation for content online differently than they did before, because it's become our new reality. And I think the church will have to adapt. And I know, Brandon, you have lots of ideas for what that means, and we'll just have to purposefully and intentionally say, this is our new reality. Let's adapt, and see what God will do. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think what's going to happen more than ever before is people are going to want to feel connected throughout the week. Mm-hmm. And that's where I believe being able to do things online simplifies, or even via Zoom, it simplifies us being able to feel like we're all connected to each other throughout the week, just not on the weekend. Anything you want to add, Di?
Yeah, I would say, because I spent a lot of time actually thinking about this yesterday, because we're going to have to start a serious conversation about what does it look like to reopen the doors of a church in waves. And I think the way that we look at germs is going to be changed for a long time. Like, for example, the four of us are from a generation of you drag yourself in no matter how sick you are, unless you're puking your guts out. And now those people need to not go anywhere, not just because of coronavirus, but I think we think about germs differently. Little things like when you go someplace and you use a pen, like I think now I'm going to, and I'm not a germaphobe at all, but I'm going to think, has this pen ever been cleaned? I think I'll use my own pen. And how does that translate into the church world? Are we ever going to put pens on chairs again? Or are we going to provide everything that we can digitally so people aren't touching common things? I think there are things like that we're going to have to brainstorm our way through that are a little bit uncharted. I also think, and I don't want this to sound negative, but I think right now, we as pastors are available to people 24/7 because we're in a very digital world. And so the thinking of a person that goes to work and then comes home and thinks, oh, I don't want to call the church at 9 p.m. because, that's family time. It's like all those lines are blurred. And so I think we are going to have to really think about how to be available, but not all of us available all the time in order to just be healthy. And then the other thing that I think is so cool is if you would have ever told me that there'd be a day where we would scroll through Facebook and most of what we find is sermons, devotionals, and worship, I would have never believed it. But it is so cool to see not only that we're able to use that tool, but people are boldly using that tool, and it's everywhere. And I just think that's something that needs to stick around, and I think it will. I think that ability to reach people is just going to continue.
Well, thanks, guys. Really appreciate how you guys have adjusted, been flexible, worked like crazy, and tried everything you can to keep our church united together, and just appreciate all your hard work. My last thing I want to say is happy birthday to Marshawn Lynch. So, all right, guys, see you soon.
Thanks, Brandon and Di and Dan.